I have always been a man of routines. I would wake up early, have my coffee with toast, and leave for work before the sun had fully risen. My apartment was small but comfortable, a quiet place, perfect for someone like me who valued solitude and the predictability of life. I lived on the top floor of an old but well-maintained building. The rent was reasonable, and although the building had its peculiarities, such as narrow hallways and a noisy elevator, they never really bothered me. I work as a freelance illustrator, which means I spend most of my days indoors, surrounded by pencils, papers, and screens glowing late into the night. Since childhood, drawing had always been my escape, my refuge, and now it was my livelihood. Over time, I developed a certain appreciation for isolation. I'm not the kind of person who goes out to bars or dinners. In fact, my social interactions were limited to occasional phone calls with my younger sister and a few email exchanges with clients. The apartment had only 3 rooms: a spacious bedroom that also served as a studio, a compact kitchen, and a small but functional bathroom. My window faced a narrow alleyway between buildings, one of those places where sunlight barely reaches the ground during the day. I had always seen that as an advantage. Less light meant fewer reflections on my screen and fewer distractions. The only thing that bothered me was the glass of my window. Unlike the other windows in the building, mine seemed different. The glass was dark, almost black, yet when I looked through it, I could still see outside with an eerie clarity. For a long time, I didn't think much of it. Maybe it was tinted glass or just another peculiarity of the old building. But over time, I started to notice something strange. Small details, imperceptible at first glance, but as the days passed, they began to unsettle me. Sometimes when I looked through the window, the streetlights seemed to flicker in an unnatural way. Other times, the buildings across the alley looked slightly different from how I remembered them, as if something was subtly wrong. At first, I blamed it on exhaustion. My sleep schedule was a mess, and working long hours in front of a screen could have been affecting my perception. But then, the sleepless nights began. I would wake up for no reason, always around 3 in the morning. The apartment was drowned in absolute silence, but there was a strange sensation in the air, something heavy, as if the very space around me was watching. It was ridiculous, of course. I had always been a rational man, someone who didn't fall for superstitions or delusions. But it was impossible to ignore the fact that every time I woke up in the middle of the night, I felt an irresistible urge to look at the window. And the first time I gave in to that impulse, I realized there was something watching me from the other side of the glass. At first, I tried to convince myself it was just an illusion, a distorted reflection of the dim light from the alley. But something about that presence felt real. It was just a shadow, an almost imperceptible silhouette, but it was there, motionless, on the other side of the black glass. My body tensed, my breathing quickened, and a chill ran down my spine. Even with the darkness dominating the room, I could feel that it saw me, that it knew I was there. I remained frozen for minutes, waiting for the figure to move, to do something, anything, but it remained motionless, just watching me. The next day, I tried to rationalize the experience. Maybe it was my own shadow cast in some bizarre way, or perhaps a resident from the neighboring building standing at an odd angle. But when I looked out the window during the day, everything seemed normal. The alley, the streetlights, the buildings on the other side, there was no evidence that anything had been there the night before. The following nights followed the same pattern. I would wake up at 3 in the morning, feel the weight of the silence, and unable to resist, look at the window. And there it was. Always in the same spot, always motionless. It never came closer, never moved away. It just watched me. Over time, my routine began to crumble. Exhaustion piled up, my sleep became scarce and fragmented. My work started to suffer. My drawings grew darker and more erratic. Even my sister noticed the change in my voice when she called to ask if I was okay. I lied, of course. What could I say? That I was being watched by something that only appeared at 3 in the morning? That my window didn't reflect the real world? That was when I decided to test it. I set up a camera, pointed it at the window, and let it record through the night. The next morning, with trembling hands, I checked the footage. The video showed exactly what I had seen: the dark alley, the dim streetlight, and the shadow. But what made my breath catch was that, at a certain moment in the recording, the figure moved. My heart pounded as I watched the footage. The dark silhouette, once motionless, slowly leaned forward as if trying to get a closer look at me. There were no visible eyes, no facial features, just a dense, contorted shadow against the glass. The most disturbing part was that, the moment the figure moved, my body in the video reacted as well. I, asleep, turned in my bed, as if I had sensed its presence even while unconscious. I turned off the video and took a deep breath. I needed to understand what was happening. I spent the entire day trying to find a logical explanation. Optical illusion? Some flaw in the glass? A reflection of something I wasn't noticing? Nothing made sense. That night, I decided to face the presence head on. I wouldn't sleep. I stayed awake, sitting in my studio chair, watching the window. The clock beside my bed read 2:57 a.m. With each passing minute, my anxiety grew. Then, when the hands finally reached 3 o'clock, the silhouette appeared again. This time, it wasn't static. It moved slowly forward, pressing against the glass. My entire body turned ice cold. The shadow was no longer just a distorted stain. It was beginning to take shape, as if something was trying to cross the barrier between us. My reflection should have been there, but it wasn't. Instead, it was there, occupying the space, mimicking me, studying me. Then the thing did something that left me paralyzed with pure terror. With a slow, deliberate movement, it raised one hand and knocked on the glass. The sound echoed through the room, dry and hollow. My heart leapt into my throat. It wasn't an illusion. That thing was trying to get in. Whatever it was, it didn't belong to my world. But now, I knew I was no longer safe. And worse, it knew that I knew. The next night, I made a drastic decision. I covered the window with a dark sheet and pushed a bookshelf against it. If I couldn't see it, maybe I could pretend that nothing was happening. But at 3 in the morning, I woke up to a different sound. It wasn't the knocking on the glass anymore. It was something scratching, like nails scraping against the wood of the bookshelf. It no longer needed to be seen. It knew where I was. Fear consumed me, and I started avoiding my bedroom at night. I slept on the couch in the living room, but the feeling of being watched never went away. It was as if the presence had seeped into the very structure of the apartment. The corners seemed darker than usual. Shadows stretched unnaturally across the floor, and the silence became suffocating. That was when I realized something even worse. No matter where I went inside the apartment, I always felt a weight behind me. Something unseen but present. And one night, when I finally gathered the courage to look into the bathroom mirror, I saw the silhouette standing behind me, visible in the reflection but absent from the real world. It was no longer just at the window. Now it was inside my home. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe for more.